And welcome to this emergency podcast show episode of the Titan Upcast. I'm your host, Joshua Mickle, and we have some breaking news that has just come down the pipeline the last hour or so, and it is a doozy, and maybe it's not a surprise for you Titan fans out there that may be asking for this all year. But before we get started with that, I have one note to say. I just saw the Raiders game today because yesterday the game was blacked out. I live here in Memphis, Tennessee, and the game was regionally blacked out from the Titans game. So a little ticked off that happened, but then again, I was spared of what I had to watch today, and I'm glad I watched it today in just 30 minutes or so because that's how putrid our game was yesterday. And apparently, no one else in our Titans brass didn't want to deal with this any longer because now it is official. Brian Callahan has been fired as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Now, in terms of how we got here, Brian Callahan was stated back when he was on the hiring cycle when we fired Mike Vrabel that besides Ben Johnson because he was sticking around Detroit, besides Jim Harbaugh because he was going over to Los Angeles for the Chargers, that was a done deal. Everybody said, all the experts in the media said that Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator, the non-play calling offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, was the top option for head coaching in that cycle. And apparently had some sort of deal lined up with the Commanders at the time until he said, you know what, I'm going to go to Tennessee. Now, he comes to Tennessee. He says the right things. He makes the right moves with Rand Carthon at the time. Folks want to play in hindsight of like, oh, it was such bad moves. It got you the first overall pick. At the time, they were not bad moves, and everyone was raving about Rand's decision-making and Brian Callahan's coaching at the time. The problem last year was Will Levis's inability to make plays and was just a turnover machine. And I want to preface by saying this as a Titans fan. If you watch the all-22 film from last year to this year in comparison, it is not close. The play calling last year was really good, and Will Levis just missed the reads, and he missed a lot of throws that resulted in turnovers on him making the wrong reads. This year, though, it is a 180. It is a 180 for Brian Callahan. Where did last year go? The only explanation I have is that he had a mental lapse and didn't pick up his brain at the end of 2024 after they got the first overall pick. Because after that happened, apparently his brain was left somewhere in 2024. Because in 2025, his head coaching tendencies, his play calling tendencies have been atrociously bad. Never again do I want to hear the following as a Titan fan. Ken Whisenhunt is the worst coach in Titans history. And NFL gamers on their couches cannot do better than actual head coaching professionals. A lot of us that have played Madden, a lot of us that like to be couch coaches, every single Sunday, that's what we fans do when our team sucks. We can legitimately do a better job than what Brian Callahan gave us this year in 2025. And we should be winless. That Arizona game, the biggest fluke ever. I enjoy the win. I enjoyed that as Cam Ward's first win. Although it wasn't pretty. I don't enjoy that. I enjoy that as Cam Ward's first win. I do not enjoy it as a supposed, could this be a stepping point? I flirted with that last week and said, hey, the possibility is there, but I did acknowledge to you guys that in reality, it's probably not going to happen at all. Not going to happen. Brian Callahan fired. And by the way, I hope you guys like the new lower third Chiron that I've made here. Been working on that for about a week or so compared to the previous one that I've had. So I hope you guys like the new look down there. Anyways, Brian Callahan now out as head coach for the Tennessee Titans. What does this mean for the 2025 season? It means that the first overall pick pursuit of it just got a little murky. Because had you kept Brian Callahan in for all of 2025, you could have pulled a 2016. You could have had the first overall pick. You have your young franchise quarterback ready to go. And you flip that first overall pick for a haul of players. That 2016 draft trade that we traded away with our first overall pick, people forget, and they need to remember. It netted us the following. Jack Conklin, a really good right tackle that for some reason we let go and has plagued us to this very day. To this very day as to why we didn't keep him, not even for a fifth-year option. Great right tackle in Jack Conklin. This guy in the second round that you may have heard of, his name is Derrick Henry. And this safety that didn't get a NFL scouting combine invitation by the name of Kevin Byard. That trade netted us those three players. It also gave us a potential of what could have been a really good wide receiver in Corey Davis. But he ultimately turned out to be a bust for where he was drafted in the top 5. It netted us those 4 players. Conklin, King Henry, Kevin Byard, and at the time, really good pickup in Corey Davis. Now, it gets a little murky. Because right now, the Jets are still the only winless team left in the NFL. And they almost beat the Broncos. They should have beaten the Broncos. What the heck happened before halftime? Makes Brian Callahan look like Mike Shanahan of the good old days of the Broncos. That was inexcusable by Aaron Glenn at the end of the half there, and even the international crowd there and Rich Eisen calling the shots there on the broadcast was like, "What the heck is going on?" Now Jets fans are wondering, how is Aaron Glenn still a head coach? How long before he's gone? Brian Callahan coming off of the Vrabel era where it was tumbling down, the house of cards was falling down. We were in mediocrity. We couldn't get out of it. Mike Vrabel wouldn't let us get out of it, and his wanting to have full autonomy over management, Bill O'Brien was not going to fly with any organization front office except for New England right now because of what happened with Gerard Mayo in year 1 with him. Because then Robert Kraft just said, you know what? Here's the keys to the kingdom, Mike Vrabel. You do what you want to do. And we'll see how that turns out. Right now, they're on a nice honeymoon at 4-2 because the Bills gave him a breadbasket a week ago on Sunday Night Football. And I am not going to be scared of the Patriots. Yes, they're going to beat us probably at home. But I am not going to be giving Mike Vrabel validation for beating the lowly Saints this past Sunday. Give me a break. Give me a break. Sometimes they'll beat... Hey, Vrabel has a reputation of losing to teams he shouldn't be losing to. So if you're all riding high and mighty of we beat the Saints. We beat the Saints and we beat the Bills. We could beat the worst teams and we could beat the best teams. What happens when you start losing to the teams you shouldn't be losing to? Because that's what he did for many years in Tennessee. maybe Abs can tell you firsthand because he lost to the Texans in inexcusable fashion at home, no less, for so many years. Mike Vrabel gets kicked out the door for those reasons, rightfully so. And Brian Callahan sold us a false bill of goods. He used his resume of working with Joe Burrow, with Matthew Stafford, and Peyton Manning for a bit in Denver, I believe, is what the story was. There is zero excuse for Brian Callahan at this point for what he has done with the 2025 season with play calling. It is inexcusable. You have a quarterback that his offense placates to read option, to quick throws, quick reads, all that stuff. And what are we seeing? Lack of RPOs. I believe we only ran 4. Someone like StatMuse I saw on X said that they only ran 4 RPOs in all of the Raiders game yesterday. Pathetic. Really pathetic. You know you're not a good team. Why the heck are you trying out there yesterday the following wide receiver trio? Jefferson, TJ Jefferson. That's how irrelevant my team is. Is like, who's a tight, like, I want to get the first name right. It's Van Jefferson. Yeah. You have the trio of Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, and Malik Eilmanor. What the actual heck are you doing? Of course Cam Ward's not going to find open reads. All 3 of them are collectively slow. They are not fast. Where's Chim Dike? Where's Gunnar Helm? Where's Cheek if you want to put him out there at the wide receiver slot? We have fast options. Where's Tajay Spears? No, let's run wide receiver screens. Death taxes wide receiver screens never work in Tennessee for years now. It doesn't work and I implore the next head coach that comes in here to not even think about wide receiver screens for the first 2 years of your administration. Just chuck it out of your brain, take it out of your playbook, and throw it in the trash can because it doesn't work for us apparently through multiple coaches now, multiple play callers. It doesn't work for some reason. Get away from it. Now, why try out those trio of wide receivers to your quarterback? Why do you have to punish him like that? I hope whoever's the interim head coach, and let me see if they've actually announced it, as I am going about this, there's still no word, as I try to bring this up on the screen for you from my Google search right here. There's still no word as to who the interim head coach is going to be. Still no word of that yet. And I think the longer this persists, this is going to be a problem. They need to figure out quickly who their interim head coach. They need to figure out today. Practices are tomorrow. This ain't a bye week. I mean, it may be a bye week for the Patriots. But you still got to put something out there. Now, who the interim head coach could be? Mike McCoy's being floated out there. Denard Wilson's being floated out there. Bones Fossil's out there. I don't want Bones Fossil out there for just one reason. I want to keep him next year as our special teams coordinator because I don't want him to be the interim head coach and then he is gone. Our special teams looks really good. We got a good return. We got a decent kicker. And we just lost our special teams coordinator. He's gone. Bye. I don't want that to happen. I want one thing of good consistency to carry over into next year. So it has to be the following. It cannot be Nick Holtz, because why was Nick Holtz passed over for play calling when Brian Callahan relinquished that to Bo Hargree? So it can't be Nick Holtz. It can't be Bo Hargree. It has to be either Mike McCoy or Denard Wilson. And whoever it is, the following needs to happen, and that's this. Activate Xavier Restrepo from the practice squad. Activate him. Put him on the field. See what he can do with Cam Ward. Sit the veteran wide receivers and tight ends and let Gunnar Helm, Jim DK, and Leak Eilmanner be the front dogs of your offense. You know you're not going to be good this year. You know it. So why not trot those rookies out and see what they can do with real playing time? Stop putting a unofficial cap on rookie playing time. This frustrates me as a fan in general. It's ridiculous. If you have talent there, if you have potential, play the rookie. Play him. What are we doing here playing vets that are washed? It makes zero sense. Zero freaking sense. Play the rookies. Give the fans a reason to come to your games again. Give the fans a reason to come to your games. Because I know there's one game that I may be going to this year with my family and a few friends maybe. And both of our teams suck. And the tickets may be like pennies by that point. Maybe we can get really good front row seats for like $30, $40. I hope so. Because that'll be a fun trip. And I can boast about, I got these front row seats to the Titans game. Anyways, this whole thing has come tumbling down. And the worst scenario to this year that I said was worst case scenario has happened. I said for my season predictions on my socials and on my Casted to the King shows that we can go 0-17. We can go 3-14 again. We can have a really bad record, and Brian Callahan can still be the head coach if the following happens. If the offense is productive and it's entertaining, it can average 24 points a game. It can average you like exciting highlights that you can be ecstatic for. At least Ken Whisenhunt gave us that right out the gate with Marcus Mariota. Week 1 versus the Bucs. That game had all of us Titan fans rooting and hollering towards the skies. This is the coming out party for Mariota. Ken Whisenhunt has his quarterback for the first time since Kurt Warner. And look out. Here comes a high-powered offense in Nashville, people. And what happened? What happened? It came tumbling down. It came crashing down. And then we had to suffer through the malarkey years of that offense. But those malarkey years and that 2016 draft laid the foundation to a really good team that threatened a Super Bowl run multiple times. But it had an anemic offense with malarkey. We can't have that with the next head coach. We can't. Brian Callahan couldn't give us one Ken Whisenhunt Mariota game. He couldn't give us one. You cannot count the Arizona Cardinals game because that was fluke. That was a load of nonsense that the Arizona Cardinals was literally handed it. It's like, take it from us. We don't want to win this game. We don't want to win. Please take it from us. And we took it from them somehow. With a Tyler Lockett, Traylon Burks special fumble recovery for a touchdown. That happened. I mean, for one thing that needs to, so the worst case scenario has happened. Now, where do we go from here? First thing on the docket. Everybody from Brinker, Nihil, Borgonzi, and whoever this next head coach is going to be, all need to be facing the same timeline punishment block. Because if this next venture with the head coach fails again, all of them have to be cleared out at once. You cannot keep the head coach and get rid of the front office and then do vice versa. Get rid of the front office, keep the front office, get rid of the head coach, and then you keep the head coach and get rid. You're in this cycle of nonsense. You're in this cycle of it's mediocrity mindset, but we're losing a lot more than we're winning, which for draft purposes, that's a good thing. I mean, you can whoever this next head coach is going to be. One, say your prayers. Two, the punishment needs to be if this fails, everybody in the front office, the president, the GM, the assistant GM, their assistants, everyone between them, the interns, everyone involved, including the head coach and his lackeys, hit the road, clean house, reboot the franchise again with the coaching staff in the front office. Full on factory reset reboot. You cannot this has to be a one-page thing. It cannot be they're along with the process and they just got brought on board. You just got rid of them. Here comes someone new on board while they are well into their process. It is a nightmare scenario. But again, there's some potential. I mean, Cam Ward. I mean, unlike before we invited Mike Vrabel, where our job where our destination was unattractive, where we were unattractive as a franchise. Now there's two attractions: Cam Ward and the new stadium. We got the new stadium coming up in 2027. It looks beautiful when you walk there in person. And Cam Ward, you got the young quarterback, just like Caleb Williams in Chicago when that job was open last year. And Ben Johnson said, "There's my young quarterback. Let me go to work." And this is the situation I want to get into. Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Brady are top two on my list. They're top two on my list, and I think they secretly right now, with today's news, have this penciled in as potential landing spot for the Tennessee Titans, because look what Joe Brady has done with Josh Allen, with the lack of a Stephon Diggs. Look what Cliff Kingsbury can do with the type of prototype quarterback like Cam Ward. Look what he's doing with Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota. Rubbing salt on the wound with Mario looking as good as he does sometimes for Washington. Rubbing salt on the wound of what could have been a franchise long-term quarterback for us. What could have been. Just all the more reason just to bring him here to Nashville before he's somehow coaching up Cam Ward elsewhere, and he does well, just apparently with what Daniel Jones is doing in Indianapolis, apparently after he got out of New York. And what Sam Darnold did after he got out of the Jets and Panthers situation, and then now look what he's doing in Seattle after he had a stint with the Vikings. This goes to show you, and another point before we close the show out, is that coaching matters. Coaching matters a whole lot. Look what happened with Baker. Look what has happened with Baker Mayfield. Look what has happened with Bryce Young. Look what has happened with Sam Darnold. Look what's currently happening with Daniel Jones, Caleb Williams to an extent. After Matt Eberflus in his Thanksgiving choke hazard at the end of the game. Coaching matters. And for anyone out there to suggest or say or even remotely pin all the blame of the Titans' woes this year on Cam Ward, you got another thing coming. Because if you think that's a problem, you're the problem then. You are the problem if you think that's the case. Cam Ward's not even top 5 issues for the Titans this year. He's not even top 5. Callahan, defensive back play, defensive calling play, offensive play calling, and O-line play. All those trump before we even get to Cam Ward as the reason we're losing games. It's not even close. And another thing, we cannot have another defensive-minded head coach again. We can't. We just can't. Look what's going on with Denard Wilson. Not Denard Wilson. Look what's going on with Aaron Glenn in New York. He may be a good defensive coordinator. He may be a leader of men, as some folks want to keep saying out there that you need a head coach. Mike Vrabel's a leader of men. Aaron Glenn is a leader of men. Where does a leader of men get you when you're not good at head coaching? Nowhere. And if your offense sucks, that's even worse. That's what happened with Vrabel during his ending years in Tennessee. He was a leader of men. And his offense sucked, and we lost. So, yeah, 2 things that were just avoidable. Yeah, we cannot hire another defensive-minded guy to be a head coach. We just can't. Because you can pluck along the streets a defensive guy to be your defensive coordinator. But when you have a defensive-minded head coach and your offense is good, look what happens when they go away to be a head coach elsewhere. You run the risk, a high risk, of your offense not doing well after that. Once upon a time, we had Matt LaFleur as our offensive coordinator. Once upon a time. Look what he's doing in Green Bay. Instead of here as our OC or potentially our head coach. Arthur Smith is the perfect example of guys that should not be offensive play callers for head coaches. Did decent with us for offensive play calling, sucked as a head coach in Atlanta, and he seems to be doing better with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. It helps when you have DK Metcalf as your wide receiver. It helps when you have the Memphis native, Austin, as one of your wide receivers, the speedy wide receiver out there, who I won the Titans to draft years ago. It helps when you have that. But do not hire Arthur Smith as your head coach. We know that route and where that goes. Cliff Kingsbury has commanded that offense with Jaden Daniels and has grown as a play caller in the NFL. Joe Brady, similar thing. I want to see those guys get the nod. For Joe Brady for his first and Cliff Kingsbury as his second try to be the Titans' next head coach. Whoever else could be out there, I don't know at the time of this recording. All I know is that this upcoming Sunday is going to be really interesting to watch. It's going to be really interesting. And with that being said, we're going to close out the show like that. And until this next episode, which hopefully doesn't get blacked out here for the Patriots game for a recap video, I'm your host, Joshua Mickle, saying goodbye.